Hello, all of you fans that are out there that watch the Digging History and honoring the sacrifice show, and also watch Bravo. On the show. Let me put my glasses on because every now and then I get these little notes, and it's like I gotta have my readers on in order to see that. Sorry about the hair, folks. I'm just on here because evidently the Smithsonian Channel is playing another episode of Gun Trucks of Vietnam, and I am in that Smithsonian Channel special. It's been seen millions of times. A lot of folks out there. Let me just clear this up right now. I never got paid a penny to do that. Never got paid a penny. Number one, I don't think that anybody that was in that show, the Vietnam veterans and such, that none of them were paid. And I want to try to talk a little bit about the making of that show. What is a gun truck? What are some of the reasons why we even came up with this? And a lot of this has to do with a few things. Let me get my camera turned just a little bit here. There we go. There we go. So gun trucks. Gun trucks. Big truck, gun, maybe a metal box, maybe not a metal box. But the whole point is you take a truck and you put machine guns on it, and you up armor it, and you have a design to where it protects convoys as convoys travel. Now, in this case, it was in Vietnam. Okay. Now, there was my part, we talked about the Iraq gun trucks, and I'll get into that in a second. But let's give this to our Vietnam vets. So Larry Fyant and some of the other gun truckers that are out there, and Beth Garrigle, who was part of this whole filmmaking process, came to me and said, "Hey, look, you have a reputation from over in Iraq." A guy named Richard Kilblane, retired Army historian. He was an advisor on this, and he also basically is featured in there as well. So the whole purpose is, what was your association with the Vietnam veterans? Number one, my father was a Vietnam veteran. He was in the 173rd Airborne Brigade, and he was wounded twice in Vietnam. He did 2 tours in Vietnam, actually. So I have a very personal connection to the Vietnam veterans. The Vietnam veteran gun truckers had a very personal connection to me because of my role in Iraq. So a lot of people look at pictures and they see, I was a second lieutenant, pretty old guy. I joined the Army originally in 1985. Okay. So I was a private. I joined the West Virginia Army National Guard. I was with Alpha Troop, 1st 150th. Was a cavalry scout, 19 Delta cavalry scout, armored reconnaissance specialist, and went active duty. Ended up having a total of 16 years enlisted time. I had served in Desert Storm. I was a sergeant in Desert Storm with 24th Infantry Division, 2nd of the 18th Infantry, and very proud of that service as well. When 9/11 occurred, okay, I was in the National Guard, and I was actually working for a very large company called Tyson Foods. And when 9/11 occurred, I felt like a lot of other Americans that I needed to be over there fighting in this war. And so I left my job with Tyson Foods. It was a good job. You can check on about $80,000 a year as a safety and security director. Was up in Buffalo, New York, and I had Buffalo, New York. I had plants in Maine. It was a complex. It was an entire complex of plants that were there. So I went in the Army. Went back I was already in the National Guard, so I volunteered to go active duty. And they said, "Hey, we need some officers." And so I had a college degree. I applied, and I got a direct commission. I was one of 2 people that got a direct commission. That in that cycle, one of 2. Was an armor officer. Went to California and then came back. They needed air defense artillery, so I went to Fort Bliss, Texas, trained at Fort Bliss, Texas, and became a short-range air defense artillery officer. Came back, was waiting on my orders, volunteered, wanted to go. And when I got sent over with a transportation unit. And getting over there, I realized, basically, why are they sending this guy, me, over to it with a transportation unit? And it was because that convoys were getting crushed. They were just getting chewed up by the enemy. The enemy would wait, and they'd set up these complex L-shaped linear ambushes, daisy chained IEDs, things that really hurt you, really killed you. And we were losing. We were losing cargo. We were losing people. We were losing mainly civilian drivers. There was a lot of civilian drivers that were killed over there from Pakistan, Egypt, the Philippines. And those were the people that were delivering most of the cargo up and down in the white trucks. Now, we had green trucks as well, which were soldiers that drove those. And so when we got over there, I said, well, we've got to develop this plan. Look, I was an old armor infantry guy. I had an 11 series MOS, I had a 19 series MOS. I knew how to do ambushes. I knew how to counter ambushes on foot and in armored vehicles. And we had to figure out a way to apply tactics. Now, I'm not the kind of person that thinks that I'm smarter than everybody else. That's a big problem in America. That's a big problem in corporate America. People think that they're just too damn smart for everybody else, and they think they have to recreate the wheel. The wheel had been built in Vietnam. The wheel had been built in dealing with guerrilla warfare, attacking convoys up and down, the routes in Vietnam. And they had, 2-lane and in some cases, larger highway systems. But they had figured out a way, to defeat the enemy and to get their convoys of supplies through. Because look, here's the deal. I don't care how tough you are as an infantryman, as a grunt, or how tough I was, as an armor officer. When I run out of ammo, fuel, and food, then I'm down to these. And if I'm out of food and water, it ain't going to be long until these are getting harder to hold up as well. So don't ever write off your logistical support. That's a dumb thing to do. And so looking at this, I started to research, convoy ambushes, and everything started coming up about Vietnam and Richard Kilblain and James Lyles and a guy named Horvath and so many others that are out there. Rich Kilblain's name kept coming up. He was, he was working for the transportation school at Fort Eustis. So I'm going to call this guy. So I'm here at a talk, pick up the phone, and I get a DSN number to call back to the States to try to get a hold of Richard Kilblain. So understand there's a big time difference. So, I always joke with Rich. Rich was a government worker, so I had to work around his schedule. Okay, so I had to be in there either late at night, early in the morning, or whenever I could catch this guy, so I could talk to him. And I did, and we hit it off. Started to talk about tactics. He says, "Look, let me get you in touch with some of these Vietnam veterans." We had email at the time, so we were emailing and communicating. These guys came out of the woodworks, feeding me information, pictures, diagrams. Jack Horvath called me up. He was a captain, did convoy security and all of that. And he says, ultimately, you need to combine your skills that you learned as an infantryman, as an armorman, and as a transportation officer. And you need to figure out how to protect these convoys. And so we went around and we created an SOP. And the SOP was written for a unit in Iraq called the 518th Combat Gun Truck Company, the U.S. Regulators, baby, of which I was one of the original founding members. And we had 3 officers. We had several non-commissioned officers and a whole bunch of enlisted guys. We actually started off with 104 soldiers to create this unit. So when it came down, the Army came down and said, look, we're going to make this unit. All you're going to do is escort convoys. And the reason being is because we were having a problem with the military police. Not slamming you, MPs, okay? But this is a field that, you know, that you really didn't always do the greatest job on. I'm just telling the truth, because you utilize the tactics that you were taught. Spray, pray, and push. So you get shot at, the enemy's shooting at you from all sides. You return fire, and then you run like hell and get out of the zone. And if somebody gets hurt, you have to just wait and go back and get them. See, that didn't make any sense to me. See, there was something missing here. So as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this, I'm like, how do we do this? So I look at this like reacting to near and far ambushes. Went to Captain Rob Landry, said, turn, fix, and fire, man. That's how we defeat the enemy. Now, and before this had occurred, I had some experience with dealing with the enemy. Had some experience going in and out of Baghdad International Airport, through Fallujah. I'd already been wounded twice, folks. By the time that the 518th stood up, you know what I mean, in May of 2004, you know, we had already ran, you know, the meat grinder many times and learned a lot of lessons. And not one time did we ever lose a truck to enemy fire, or did we leave anybody to fall into the hands of the enemy, dead or alive. Never. So that gave me a reputation. That gave my crew a reputation. My crew was very focused. We were very mission focused. A lot of people say, well, they were brutal. They were just jerks. They were just, maybe so. Maybe so. But I wasn't about dying out there, and I wasn't about out there letting somebody else die, okay, because I was afraid to do my job. So when you look at the Smithsonian Channel gun trucks of Vietnam, understand a lot of the stuff they did in Vietnam, we started to do in Iraq. Plain and simple. Dealing with an enemy. Shooting at them and thinking you hitting them, that ain't working. When the convoys go through, you set up gun trucks that escort the convoy out of the kill zone. But we also had hunter-killer teams that peeled off, found the enemy, fixed the enemy, turned, fixed, and fired, which meant we identified our targets, and just like we did in armor, we bam them and beat them until we destroyed them. And in some cases, we would chase them off of the roadways until we destroyed them, killed them, shot their vehicles, blew them up, whatever. You know, there's no nice way to put this thing, okay? I was leading my convoy defenses as I would have led from a tank in the damn hatch on the 50 caliber machine gun. So you can see what's going on, and I can get my fixes on the battlefield. You can't see anything or do anything sitting down in the bottom of that Humvee, you know, with your head between your legs, kissing your hind end. You just can't do that. You've got to be up and be visual. Is it dangerous? Yes, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for your gunners. It's very dangerous for your drivers. And it's really dangerous for your truck drivers. The Vietnam veterans instilled that in me. So when we wrote these tactics of turn, fix, and fire, and if you go to the current convoy ambush case studies that Rich Kilblain has written, and you go and you look and you see what the Army utilizes today for defending convoys, a lot of those lessons came there. So thank you to the United States Army. The Marine Corps always got it. You know, they were always about killing the enemy. I'm just telling you right now. Say what you want about the Marines. You know, I mean, we, you know, yeah, you know, we butt heads during the Army-Navy game, but I'm telling you, I love those Marines because they knew how to deal with it, because everybody was an infantryman first. And they really embraced that warrior ethos that we have in the Army, that we have to embrace. You know, I don't care what your job is, cook, whatever. I'll tell you a little story about that. So when they formed the 518th, they sent us truck drivers, cooks, clerks, mechanics, you name it. Anybody and everybody that they either, you know, thought would do a great job, or in some cases they wanted to get rid of. Okay. I was one of them, I think, that they wanted to get rid of. I don't know. But either way, I went over and was glad to be over there. And forming this unit, zero assets, zero MTO. There's no map to say, how do you build this thing? So I had to go to the Vietnam gun truckers to figure out, how in the hell do we build this thing? They were all excited, man, because, you know, they took part in the building of a unit that conducted combat operations successfully in Iraq. Successfully. You know, once the 518th got up and running, units specifically requested us, because they knew that we would not button up and run when an attack occurred. And unfortunately, that has happened. Now, I always tell people, I don't want to point out all the negatives, but when you're running away, it's much easier for an enemy to shoot you in the back when you're trying to get away than if you just turn around and face them and boom, 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 start putting some lead down range. Because I'm telling you, it's harder for them to focus on shooting you. If you think, oh, I'm not going to worry about that guy because he's running away. No, you're the one they're going to shoot. Okay. I'm just going to tell you that right now. They don't care. The enemy is looking to destroy you, to kill you, to rob you of your assets. So I realized that. My men realized that. And most people that after they were over there a little while, they realized that. Sometimes it took them to get shook up a little bit to say, hey, this is serious business. You know, this isn't a drive down, down the Miami freeway. This is serious. Okay. So the Vietnam veterans instilled in me, anyways, was that ferocious. They fired 100 rounds at you, you fire 1,000 rounds back at them. And a lot of the things that they gave me was very emotionally driven, very emotional, because it was still very fresh in their minds whenever they were talking about these ambushes with me. And I listened, okay, to whenever they told me about how trucks that were making a turn, this is when they're going to hit you. When you've got to make that hard turn, okay, and you're exposed, that's when the enemy's going to hit you. And they're going to hit you in the center, okay, so that you break up your convoy. You've got half of it caught in the kill zone and the other half hauling butt, because that's what they've been taught to do. And if you don't have gun trucks that are out there that will break off on the flanks and fight to defend these guys, which means engage and destroy the enemy by the use of fire and maneuver, then you're going to lose your whole dang convoy. And then you're going to see it on CNN. You're going to see it on Fox News. You know, the nastiness of that. We've seen it. Okay, you go back, you look at the Iraq Jessica Lynch convoy episode. Look at that. Okay, people were killed. Terrible situation. What went wrong? What was right? Jessica Lynch will tell you what happened during that convoy, and so will most of the other people. Some of them did some great things. Individual soldiers doing individual things. But collectively, they needed, okay, a better plan to react to enemy fire. And never think that there's a safe zone, because there is no safe zones in a combat zone. I don't care if you're 50 feet from the front gate of your camp, you're in your camp, or you're at the airport down wherever, you know, getting ready to fly home. There are no safe zones in a combat zone. And a lot of times people got really comfortable with that. So when the gun trucks of Vietnam started airing or started filming, there was a great story to show the impact of the younger generation on the Vietnam generation and how they influenced real world decisions and policy that is still used today. So I helped write, you know, the convoy security tactics that are used today. And whether my name's on it or not, I don't care. What I care about is the fact that soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines have utilized the tactics that we developed in Iraq and survived because of it, and won battles, big battles. I mean, that's just like the greatest thing in the world for me to see that. The same thing was going on with the guys from Vietnam. So if you've never seen the Smithsonian Channels, Gun Trucks of Vietnam, I would so encourage you to do that, because you will be blessed by it. You'll be blessed by it greatly. The heroes, many of them are no longer with us. Since the show has aired, some of them have passed away, unfortunately. Mostly from cancer. Okay. And they're getting older, and it's like, you really want to talk to these heroes and understand they didn't stop serving. They continued to serve in this current war. In 2004, when this young hillbilly second lieutenant, 30-some-year-old second lieutenant, made a phone call to a guy in Fort Eustis, Virginia, to say, hey, I need some help. I need some help writing the tactics, because I'm going to be the executive officer, the XO, of a brand new unit called the 518th Combat Gun Truck Company, U.S. Regulators. And because of that interaction, and because of that humility, okay, humility, its absence is so prevalent today. So many damn people don't have no humility. They don't have no ability to say, you know what, I don't know this. Can I get some help? Because you're afraid of all the bullshit on social media, the doxing, the coxing, the everything else that goes on with people. You say something, it upsets somebody. Next thing you know, your address and everything. Hell, you want to know where I live at? I don't give a shit if you know where I live at. I'll do the same thing to you if you come around here starting these stuff that we did to these people that attacked our convoys. I'm not fooling around with you. But what I'm telling you is this, that we have to learn from each other. We have to stop this nonsense of thinking that we're smarter, better. You know what I mean? We have to stop thinking that we're smarter and better than everybody else. And we got to not be afraid to go and ask for help. That's how I got those tactics. And that's how I was able to work with, at that time, there were 50-some-year-old Vietnam veterans who not only helped us write tactics, folks. When they found out we didn't have up armor, they started writing all their congressmen saying, what's wrong with you? Well, I got a call from a very angry logistics major who said, I'm looking for a Lieutenant McCormick. You need to get some trucks down here. There's all kinds of armor plating and steel down here from a guy named Steve De Teresa from a congressman's office named Duncan Hunter. And that's how we got up armor for our vehicles. Now, unfortunately, it didn't come until late in the game. And a lot of people, to include myself, got wounded. But you know what? The point is that it came. And it came because of that ability to have the humility to ask for help. So the Gun Trucks of Vietnam is a very special show on the Smithsonian Channel that I would highly recommend that everybody watch. You will be blessed by it. You will learn from it. People will, there's just some great lessons. I love those guys. I do. And every time one of them, goes home to be with the Lord, I think about it every day. I think about these guys helped me and continue to help me to this day. Because when I came home, these same Vietnam veterans that we created these partnerships, these friendships with, they were there when it was like, how do I adjust to civilian life? I'm angry all the time. That whole PTSD thing and all of that stuff. Many of those guys probably kept me from just, putting my hands around people's necks, because you just don't know how to deal with stuff. Okay. So the Vietnam veterans that are in this documentary, God bless them all. And you really need to watch the documentary. Again, I wanted to explain it because I get calls all the time. Hey, this is this is a great show. I didn't even know you was on it. It's because I don't go around blowing the bugle about it. You know what I mean? It's been seen by millions of people. I get calls from people, old friends that I'd never, I hadn't spoke to in years. Say, hey man, I saw you on the Smithsonian Channel. That was wonderful. Great. But how about everybody else? Did you see everybody else? And did you get the gist of what we were saying in that? 2 generations, a younger generation, humbled ourselves to reach out and ask for help. And that's what really made the 518th Combat Gun Truck Company the unit that it was. And it was. I'd put it up against any unit in the United States Army or any branch whatsoever. They were a kick-ass unit. There ain't no other way to say it. Okay, folks? So I know there's been some profanity in this, but I'm getting back to being a soldier again. And every time that documentary comes out, I think about my friends that are on there, especially the ones that have passed away. And I think I really got, people say, man, you're a hero. I'm like, no, but I sure had an opportunity to get to know a heck of a lot of them. And I was very blessed. No, I wasn't the hero. Those guys were the heroes. And so I just want to wrap it up by saying, thank you to everybody that is watching the Smithsonian Channels, Gun Trucks of Vietnam. There's going to be a follow-on. We've talked about this for a while. So we'll be meeting in Fort Eustis, Virginia, on May the 18th. Get that, 5/18, for a reunion. And we're going to come together and we are going to really start hammering out part 2. The sons of the Vietnam, the sons and the daughters, actually, of the Vietnam generation, who went on and listened to their father's advice and listened to their father-like figures' advice. And we humbled ourselves, you know what I mean? And we learned something from that. And God bless them for giving us that knowledge free. Not only that, but going to bat for us to get us the equipment that we needed, because they knew we couldn't ask for it. What was that Dennis Rumsfeld said? Rumfeld said. He said, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want, right? We wanted more stuff. Those Vietnam veterans happened to get that for us. So that's part of the story that you don't know about. It's not on the Smithsonian Channel. But most importantly, we just met some really great American patriots, and everybody's been blessed by them. So, hey, folks, thanks a lot. I know this isn't about digging and all that other stuff, but I thought this was important to put this out. And God bless you for listening to it and hearing me rant and rave a little bit. Nobody's told you they loved you today. Let me tell you, God loves you. God loves you so much that he gave his only begotten son, Jesus Christ. And whosoever shall believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Right, folks? Never forget that. If you ain't a believer, 13 seconds in a firefight, and you'll be a believer, okay? God bless you, folks. Have a great day. We'll catch you next time on Digging History with the Gun Truck LT, which is why that it's called Gun Truck LT, because I was on gun trucks and I was an LT, lieutenant. I ended up getting out as a captain. I made major, but I didn't hold it long enough, so it's not a big deal. But I retired as a captain. I like being the captain, man. It's okay. To all my fellow soldiers out there, God bless you. All my gun truckers out there from Vietnam, I love you guys. And let's keep watching. Look for the sequel, part 2, Gun Trucks of Iraq and Afghanistan, which is going to be rock and rolla, kick a butthola. Take care.